Hello. So here's a huge QR code for the slides. There's also a link to a GitHub repository I will use later. And in the meanwhile, I will introduce myself. I'm Vanessa. You can find me on Twitter as Vanse. You can see I'm from Munich on the emojis. I work as a tech lead at I work as tech lead in frontend at savvy.io. And yeah, in my spare time, I'm co-hosting the German web development podcast Working Draft. In the past, I also hosted the front-end testing podcast Expect Exception, and I was part of the program committee for the JS Congress. Savvy, the startup in Munich I work for, is a platform for employee enablement, so we easily onboard, train, develop people of the company. So if you had ever had the problem of having your first time at the office and you didn't even know where the room was or where the building was, we would be here for you. But today we are going on a journey to use the reactivity and composition API. In this talk, I'm going to use them not only to reuse logical units, but just by default. And I will use it with script setup. Everything I show, though, would be able with just using the setup function, and you can use it in combination with the options API. And I want to use those APIs to actually manage state in your Vue applications. And for that, I will use the composition API, so the setup function. But what I actually want to focus on is the reactivity API using ref, computed, and read-only. And this is already everything I need to do to create state in Vue components. And for that, we are going to have a look at this application. So this is a Vue application. It is my dashboard. It has a greeting with my name, first name, last name. And I have a dashboard, a list of my items, which I can click on those buttons to delete those items. OK, so let's check out the code for this. So I said it's a Vue app, and I'm here in my app.vue, where I do not much. I just import my dashboard and use it here in the main tag. Heading over to my dashboard, I have a template block, and I have a block of my script. In the template block on top, I have a heading with greeting and my full name. And I have a list, a transition group for a nice, smooth transition. And I loop over all items in an items array. I say the count with a name. And here is my button. And when I click on it, I delete my item. OK, so that was the template. And now we are going to focus on the script block, which is written in the options API. And I'm using TypeScript for this. So I see my props, my data, computed, and methods. And what I can see here is I have two functionalities in this component. I have the part for greeting, which I have in my data object, which doesn't actually have to be in the data function, but it's reactive because it's in a data function, but it actually never changes. And then I have something for the items. Then I have something for the greeting functionality, again, the computed property, and I have the method to delete the item. And to be able to create state now, with the composition API, I will migrate this to use the composition API using script setup. And the first thing I want to do is to move the script block on top, because we found out after a while this is somehow more readable for a human in the flow going from the script to the template. OK, next. I'm going to add the keyword setup. And my IDE is already telling me, hey, in the setup function, you don't have to, or you can't export default component. So I get rid of this file, and I can also get rid of the defined component here. I don't need a name, and these components I import on top, I also don't need to register anymore. And the rest I actually have to refactor now. So for the props, I write define props, and I practice this syntax on the way in the plane 500 times, and I get it correctly now without copying. So I have the first name of string, and I have a last name of string, and this is everything what I have to do, because they are required, so I don't have defaults, nothing more to do. The next thing here, the greeting, I don't need to have it reactive, as I already said, so I will just make const greeting. Sorry, as I said, I don't need a ref, so I just make an hello, and I'm already done with the greeting. Next, I could also refactor the items, but what I said before, I want to have my code in combination. So I will go down to this computed property, and I will copy-paste this computed value. I can remove this, just clean it up, go up again, and say const full name equals a computed property. I will import it from Vue. My IDE did this for me. And I will have first name and last name. This doesn't exist in the scope of a setup function. What I want to have are the props. So I will go here and say const props equals define props. And I can copy this here or replace this with the props, like this. And I'm done. And the next part will be the items. So the items actually need to be reactive, so I will use a ref. You can use a reactive instead if you prefer this. And I will make an array, and I will just copy everything here, put it up, comment it in, and I'm done with the items. I just need to import ref from Vue so it knows what that is. I'm done with the data. And the last is the function delete item, gets an ID type number, and I will copy this line over there. And again, this items doesn't exist in the setup block, so what I will do instead is to replace this items with items.value. And with that, I already have a working state of my component again. But there is one thing people might see as a disadvantage of the script setup shorthand, is that this block here could get a bit crowded, and you might not even know anymore what's going on, especially if you don't have this categorization of data, computed, and these other little helpers. So what I will do is on top, but I could do it anywhere actually, I will say function use items, and I will put everything what I had for my items, I will remove it from here and put it inside of this function. So I'm building a composable within my own component, not in a dedicated file. And my IDE is telling me it's declared, but it's actually never read. So what I will do is going to the end of this function, and I will return the items and delete item, copy this just to the end of the setup function again, and I will destructure it from use items. And now with my IDE, I can just collapse it and have a bit of a better overview over my setup function. So I just hid away the implementation detail, and now I can see everything on one, even very, very zoomed in slide or file, everything what is exposed to the template. And just going back to the browser, everything is still working. And with that, part one is already done. We have local state management made possible with a composable. What I will do next is I will stash away everything I just did and check out to a different branch where I have implemented a new feature. So I'm opening my files and jump to the app.vue again. And what I see, bless you, we still have my dashboard, and additionally, I import the navbar and the item list. So the item list is actually just a copy-paste, because I was a lazy developer, just a copy-paste of basically almost the half what I had in my dashboard. So the items and the delete item are now also in items list. It looks like this in the browser. So I have the navbar here on top, and I have a card item which I can click, and I can see the same items, but with a reduced button, so it fits better in the design. But what you will see now, if I click on this, I remove it here from this card, and I might even do an API call to the backend, and will actually be updated. But here, the screen below isn't updated, and as a user, I probably expect this to happen. But first, because now my developer heart comes in and I want to actually refactor this, to have a dedicated composable file. So what I will do is to create a new file in the folder composables, and I will also call it useItems.ts. And hey, look, I have here something prepared. So I can just remove this from here, go to the composable useItems file and say export the function. And the only thing I have to do is import ref again, like this. And with that, this file is already done. What I like about this, having this dedicated composable file, is that I would now also be able to just also add a test for it, just next to it. I really like to have my test files right next to the file so I can also see I'm already written the test or not. Yeah, so just a little advantage of this. And now I go back to my dashboard, which is telling me I'm red, I have an error. Yes, I know. So use items doesn't exist anymore, but my IDE knows where to import it from. I don't need ref anymore because I moved that into the composable, and I'm already done this with this file. And for the my list, I will copy paste this to the items list, so I can delete everything I wrote before, can use my reusable composable now. I import it again, like this, and I don't need the ref anymore. So the website right now should still be working. Yeah, it's still working, but still not as I expect how it would behave. So now I need the global state. That would usually be in the point where I would have added Vuex or Pinya if I would have already known about Pinya. But this is stuff I wrote in September 2020, like at the day Vue 3 came out, and I didn't really know what to do, so I Googled stuff, and other smart people on the internet told me, hey, what you can do is you can just take this const items, which I'm currently declaring inside of the useItems function. What I can do instead is to put it on top, and wait for it. Look at that. I have global state, just with my composable, just with the ref, and just because I put the items on top. So easy peasy. There's one thing you have to be careful with. If I go back to my dashboard, I'm just returning the items here. It's a ref. So what I can do is I can go here and say, hey, items value is an empty array, and I can do this. So if I refresh, it's gone. And there are two ways, so that's fine. So I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying if you want to have these items as an immutable object, there are two ways you can do to prevent this from happening. And the one thing is you can make a computed property out of this and just say items value. By the way, I never know if I have to write items value or items in this computed prop, but it works. And now here on my dashboard, I can already see it's red. So my IDE is telling me cannot assign to value because it is a read-only property. And I can also see the items is a computed ref now. And on the page, I can see my list. It's still there, and I have a console error, write operation failed. Computed value is read-only. OK, I promised you a second option. And for unknown reasons, I prefer the second one. And this is to say, hey, I want to have this as read-only, these items. And it's still red, still the same error. It's a read-only property. And if I'm checking my items, I can see, hey, read-only, ref, and still the same. My list is here, and Vue wants me set operation on key value failed. The target is read-only. All right. And with that, we have now global state management with a composable, and it's actually immutable. Now I want to show you an alternative approach, how to create state based only on Vue 3 composition API. If you say, OK, this is nice, and it's kind of state management, but it doesn't feel like a store. And if you want to have it more like a store, what you need is a folder called store with an index.ts. OK, what do I need in a store file? I need a state. So I say const state. I make a ref. You can also use it reactive. And maybe I also have more values in the state. It could be is loading, is fetched, or anything else. So I will make an object with items, and I will copy this items array from the composable. And second, I need to have the function. So this is like the state before, and now I say, okay, I want some action. So I have function delete item with ID number. And I don't have items.value anymore because I said I want to have a state, and it could have also is loading booleans or other things. So I write down state.value.items equals state.value items filter item ID ID. All right. And last but not least, I need to export default the state. Let's make it a read only again, so it's immutable. And I will export delete item. Okay, so in comparison to the composable use items, I want to now have the store feeling like really global, like everywhere available. And for that, I will jump into the app.vue and use the provide inject pattern of view. So I will say provide, and I will call it store, or whatever you want it to call. And I will connect the store file with it. And if I check in my app and going to the Vue DevTools and check in my app, I can now see, okay, my store is now provided by the app component, and here's also my state. And how to use it in the dashboard. First, I just want to clean this up. I'm German, I like to clean things up first. And then I can get my store back by saying const store inject the store again. So with the quotes, because I'm taking the name. And now this error message is giving me a couple of information, like it's declared but not used. But I want you to look at its const store is of type unknown. So this is one disadvantage you will have with provide inject if you want to use it in combination with TypeScript. You won't have the problem if you don't use TypeScript. But right now it's of type unknown, and that also means if I try to use it, I don't get auto-completion from my IDE. And there are probably several ways to fix this problem, and probably better ones, but just because I trained this one for today, I will show you the one I trained for. So first I will create a type item. It has ID of number, name of string, and count of 10. And I use this item to now export a type, and I will call it root store or root item store, something like this. And I have a state, which is of type ref. And this ref has an object of items of an array of those items. Additionally, it has the delete function, delete item. And this one gets a parameter ID, and it returns void, like this. And to get this one into my dashboard, will use as casting with TypeScript, so I will say, whatever I injected here, I as a developer made sure this is of the type root store, and with that, if I hover over it, I can now see, okay, store is not unknown anymore, it's a root store. And I can finally use store, state, so I can now see it, just have to tick enter, value items, copy it here. Oh, by the way, I prefer actually to do this, just be explicit. And store delete item. And I will do exactly the same in my item list, so I can clean this up and say const store equals inject store in quotes as root store, and the same thing again, store state value items. So if you watched the Pinya, you probably watched the Pinya talk yesterday, it is a bit more crowded. With Pinya, you probably have just like state.items, and you have this shorthand available. You could, of course, also re-implement that by yourself with the provide inject pattern. Okay, and store delete item. So going back to my application, I can toggle this, and I still have my global store available. And now, if I also check in my dashboard, I can now see in my setup function, okay, we actually have something that is at least called a store. So I use both approaches, like depending on the mood. And comes with, oh, I shouldn't have reloaded first, this approach. So what I really like is just view free. I didn't have to install anything. I didn't even have to learn anything from a different framework. But the DevTool support is not as good as, for example, with Vuex on Pinia. So if I click here to delete an item, I can see here it was 3 before, now it's 2. If I click again, I have now 1 item in my array left. But if I hide it, I don't actually see what things are going on. And especially, it's also changing something of a different component, and I'm not aware of that something like this is happening. I will get rid of all my changes again with git add, git stash, and check out a different branch, actually using now Pinia, just so you can see the difference, what advantages you will have if you use Pinia instead. So I'm in the main TS, I create Pinia, I use Pinia, and I go to the stores file here. Very, very similar as everything we saw before. I define my store, I call it items, I have the state of my items, and I have the actions to delete the item. And if I check out into my dashboard, I can see I import the use item store from stores items. I use the store here, and this is what I meant before. It's a bit easier to write, just store items length, and then it's already fine. And if I go to my browser, everything's still working. Yes, good. Going to my dashboard, I will scroll down and see. I will make this a bit up. Yep. You can now see here the store with these functions. And down at the bottom for Pinia, I also have the DevTool support as an own region here at the section at the end. And additionally, I can also go to this timeline tab. And I want to have a clean state for a second. I can scroll down here to Pinia. And if I click on an action, it will actually have like a timeline and give me a bit more support if that's needed for any kind of reason. Okay, so, but finally, we also had made possible a global store with the provide inject pattern. So we've seen today that we can use just view-free reactivity to create state, just using ref and reactive, and we are also able to make the state immutable using read-only and computed. It might come with a bit of the cost of TypeScript if you have to support that and you use the provide inject pattern. You might have a lack of best practices, but I also believe that's a bit of the same for everything that we do. So I always would recommend to create a README file, sit down for 1 hour and just say, this is how we do this, these are our naming conventions. And as we see, we don't have out of the box this DevTool support as with frameworks. And now I want, because I had received so many questions regarding Pinia and Vuex, and then I Googled, I thought, what does the internet say? And the internet is saying, due to Pinia's lightweight, it is suitable for small and medium scale applications. Using Vuex for small apps is an overkill. It's suitable for large scale and high complexity Vue.js apps. I don't know where this is coming from. Like, oh, this has only 2 kilobytes, so it doesn't work with a complex app. So I work with Vue since 5 years, and with Vue free since September 2020. Yeah, and what I experienced is that you can use Pinia and Vuex for any size and any complexity your application has, and it will be just fine. So what I recommend is to use a simple state management just using the reactivity API. But it's also nice if you're in the progress of migrating your code base. What you can do is you have an older part with Vuex, you have a newer part with Pinia already, but you need this component that just works with Pinia and Vuex together so you can use the reactivity API and a composable as a bridge. When it comes to Pinia versus Vuex, use Pinia when starting a new project or when you constantly work and maintain and add new features to an existing project. And stick to Vuex if you have just this part of the code base that is just working. You just put the lid on and think, yeah, it's fine, it's working. And I wouldn't refactor just for the sake of refactoring. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.